The Saints take training camp uptown with a raucous atmosphere at ULMAN Stadium. Plus, Drew Brees reflects on a career approaching its sunset. LSU's best defense in a few years could help the Tigers transition at quarterback. And NBA veteran DJ Augustine returns home to host a kids camp. We are now a full 10 practices into Saints training camp with some camp surprises coming up. I'm Doug Mouton. Welcome to 4th Down on 4. We'll start tonight with our poll question. Drew Brees talked this week about coming to grips with his football mortality. Andrew Doak has that story in a minute. But first, how long do you think Drew Brees will play in black and gold? Vote now on our website, wwltv.com/vote, or on our mobile app. Results are coming a little later, but we'll start tonight at Tulane, where the Saints ran through a lively night practice in front of a ton of Houdats. It's a young tradition and a great one. Ricardo LeCompte was there and joins us live. Hey, Ricardo.
Hey, Doug. Yeah, and it's a great change of pace for the Saints coming here for this evening practice at ULMAN Stadium. And the players had a little bit pep in their step because of the cooler temperatures and also because you had over 9,000 fans cheering them on. As for that practice, the offense got off to a good start at the beginning, the defense able to end on a high note. And on that defensive line, no one expected Alex OKAFOR to be back in the mix so quickly. He shouldn't look this good for a guy who tore his Achilles tendon a little over 8 months ago.
Coming back into the season, this is exactly what I expected. From when I got hurt, I said I was going to be back training camp, and it's held true.
Alex OKAFOR aimed for a quick return. His expected recovery time was 8 to 10 months. Here he is, now working at training camp.
Ever since I got hurt, talking to the doctors, talking to other guys that have rehabbed it, if you stay on top of your treatment, stay on top of your rehab, they tell you don't lose anything from it.
He's worked at it. Alex is, man, he's been here 24/7. It varies from athlete to athlete. It's a good testament to their time on task.
OKAFOR still working back to his potential. He was in the middle of a career year before the tear last November. OKAFOR very confident he'll be lining up at right end when the season begins. Let's check out some of the top plays from Sunday's practice at ULMAN. And tight end Dan Arnold has been one of the surprise standouts at camp. If he can make catches down the seam like this consistently, he could find himself on the roster. Moving from 7-on-7s to team drills. Drew Brees rolls out of the pocket and tries to get one to the back of the end zone. Traquan Smith skies up, but Alex Anzalone breaks up the reception. Later in team drills, Zachary's Boston Scott is such a shifty back. He bounces it to the outside and gets inside the pylon for the touchdown. Offense doing work again later. Brees goes deep and finds Keith Kirkwood for 6. Kirkwood having a good evening at Tulane. But the defense clamps down in the 2-minute drill at the end of practice. P.J. Williams jumps in front of the route and takes it back for the pick 6. The defense with 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns in this drill, and they also did their team picture celebration after the scores. This defense doing work so far in training camp. In Uptown, Ricardo LeCompte, Eyewitness Sports. Now, Peyton wants that defense to actually have that mentality of bringing more turnovers back to the house. And he says it's not really scheme that can get you to do that. It's more or less you just having that mentality to want to take those turnovers back. So we'll see if that defense can have that kind of mindset going into the season, Doug.
9,000 fans. That's incredible at Tulane tonight. All right, Ricardo, who looked good tonight? Give me a star or two.
I'm going to have to go back to tight end Dan Arnold. Remember, this is a guy who's making transition from wide receiver to tight end. So he's now getting a full training camp playing at the tight end position. And for whatever reason, the first few days in training camp, he's the one that's making the plays, whether it's with the 2s or with the 1s, which he was actually doing tonight. And really, Drew Brees really needs an option of a tight end that he can hit down the seam. That's one of his bread and butter plays. If Dan Arnold can consistently do that, make those plays over the middle on those seam routes, then he may actually end up getting on this roster. So Dan Arnold stood out tonight, and he's actually been one of the surprises so far in training camp, Doug.
All right, great stuff, Ricardo. And Arnold, yes, he's been good all camp. It's funny, you hear the same names coming up day after day. Arnold's been one of those names. Great stuff, Ricardo. All right, it's hard to believe, but this is season number 13 now for Drew Brees in New Orleans. Number 9 has been, for me, without question, the single best player in Saints history. But Brees is seeing his days winding down, and he's not afraid to talk about it, as Andrew Doak reports.
We can't wait for this to come to us!
After 17 NFL seasons, Drew Brees would probably like to have another 10. That's how much the competitor inside of him loves the game.
We came here to hunt! We came here to win a championship!
But for one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, the writing is on the wall. Almost all of his sand has flowed through to the other side of the hourglass. And now more than ever, even number 9 thinks about his own football mortality.
I've had, real conversations with my wife over the last couple of years, just, talking about, hey, at some point, and when, and she looks me dead in the eye and just like, hey, we'll support you with whatever you want to do. You play as long as you want to play, and, we'll be right here.
This summer, Brees has talked about a work balance. As he ages, so does his wife and his children. And Brees, who is known for his tremendous work ethic, spends much of his time at the facility, which means time away from his family. Which is why Brees wants to cherish these moments in the twilight of his career as long as he can.
It's something that I want to be able to make them proud of too, because they're as big a part of it as anybody. And when I do step away from the game, we'll all know that, man, we gave it our absolute best. We gave it our all.
Brees recently told NFL Network that he had more fun playing football last year than he had in a long time. He said for the first time in his career, he told himself to play last season like it was his last. He said he took time to enjoy the locker room, to treasure the plane rides home after wins. But more than anything, he wants to soak up this time with his kids.
I love the moments I have now where my boys can come to practice and come in the locker room and, steal Lattimore's gloves out of his locker and stuff like that. That's just, those are the moments, those are the things that I hope that they remember. I want them to come out and watch guys like Michael Thomas practice. And then I can look at them and say, see guys, what you see on game day happens here every day in practice. Because they all want to be, little stud athletes, right? And so there's just so many life lessons that can be learned from being around this game and being around the guys and being around the locker room. So I try to savor those moments too. But yeah, just, man, enjoy every second of it while we can.
Brees isn't taking this time for granted. He's fighting tooth and nail to hang on to every last minute. He's in the final drive of his career, and he's hoping to make it a memory that lasts a lifetime. In Metairie, Andrew Doak, 4th Down on 4.
All right, thanks, Andrew. In that same Drew Brees interview, he was asked what he's seen so far in safety Marcus Williams, and he drew a comparison to a Destrehan legend.
Continuing to take his game to another level. He's, I really love everything about him, as a teammate and as a young player who is just hungry to be great. You have to know where he is because he's got such good range and such good instincts. I compare him, just as you look guys in history, if you were playing against Ed Reed, right? You had to do a great job of looking off and, trying to get him leaning one way so that you could, and still you throw balls and be like, how did he get there? Marcus makes some of those plays where you're like, how did he get there? Where did he come from,
That is literally the most complimentary comparison you can possibly make. Now, we asked our quartet of experts, Rod Walker, Joel Erickson, and Nick Underhill from The Advocate, and WWL Radio's Christian Garrick, what veteran has jumped out through the first week and a half of camp? And that starts with the second-year safety.
For me, on the defensive side, I'll go with Marcus Williams. This is a guy that everybody's going to be obviously watching because of the play that ended last season, but he's played really well, had a big interception on today in practice, and I think he's just playing really well. I think we can expect a really good year out of him in his second year.
I think the guy that looks probably better than anybody in camp, both sides of the ball, more flash plays than anyone, I would say Marcus Williams. And, coming back from the way last season ended, we saw all the Instagram posts, the Twitter posts, just how motivated he was. He started working out right away. I think you're seeing those dividends right away early in camp. And the major difference for me, last year a lot of the plays he made during camp at this point of the year were down the field. You see him now crashing down in the box, more anticipatory on these intermediate routes, and he looks like a guy that's just on a mission right now.
It's Sheldon Rankins and David ONYEMATA. Sheldon Rankins' evolution as a pass rusher, I think you're starting to see that this year in his third season. Same with David ONYEMATA, who was a football puppy coming out of college in Canada. He's really starting to understand how to set offensive players up and pass rushing. I think those two guys have had really good camp.
Well, it's Alex Okafor for me, and that's kind of a surprise. I mean, Alex Okafor's a guy coming off an Achilles injury. It's supposed to be 8 to 10 months. We're kind of on the front end of that, and the thing that's supposed to come back last is the explosion, the burst, the stuff you're supposed to see from an edge rusher. He's got it. It's here. He probably looks better in the first couple weeks of camp this year than he did last year when he came here from Arizona. There's been a lot of talk about Marcus Davenport. Obviously, they traded 2 first-round picks to get him. But here's the thing. If Alex Okafor is what he was in the first 10 games, the defense is fine, and everything else is just gravy, because he was great. When he went down, he was second on the team in tackles, second on the team in sacks. He was becoming a real difference maker off that right side. If he looks in the season as good as he looks out here, the defense really has a chance, because he was a great player for them.
Now, the Saints finished 17th last season in the NFL in total defense, in the middle of the pack. So clearly there is room for improvement, and they brought in 4 major pieces to try to improve. First-round draft pick Marcus Davenport to help the pass rush, slot corner Patrick Robinson, safety Kurt Coleman is number 29. He's already drawn raves from his teammates for his leadership abilities, and linebacker Demario Davis, who could play multiple spots. Now, we asked our quartet of experts how they think that foursome is fitting in so far.
I think it's easier to see how Robinson and Coleman are fitting in. They're with the first team defense, and you see their impact right away. Davenport's been out for a while with that undisclosed injury, which isn't the greatest thing for a raw player. He needs those reps. He needs to work on his craft and get better. So a little bit hard to say where he's at this point in training camp.
Demario Davis, I'm intrigued by the most. They haven't had an athletic, physical linebacker in the middle of this defense since Jonathan Vilma. I'm not comparing him to saying that he's going to be Jonathan Vilma, but they haven't had that athletic guy that can run sideline to sideline and make life miserable for offenses.
It starts with Demario Davis for me. I just think he's played really well at that linebacker spot and just gives them so much depth there with him and Craig Robinson, AJ, and all those guys are really seeming to kind of feed off of each other, it seems like to me. And then you also got P-Rob, who I think is playing really well in the secondary. And I think to some degree with a couple of those guys, we're still kind of seeing how they're going to fit. Demario Davis has played weak side linebacker and looked great doing it in this. But maybe if they want to get Alex Anzalone in, maybe he's going to move later on in camp and they're going to try to play them together. Kurt Coleman's another guy. Him and Von Bell are competing. Von Bell's looked really good. I assume that we might see some of that Buffalo package where there's 3 safeties on the field. Davenport's a guy we'd love to see more of. He's been hurt. But those other 2, it's going to be interesting to see how they fit, not because they're not playing well, just because there are other players that those positions that could force some shifting.
Coming up, we'll head to Baton Rouge, where this season Dave Aranda will have his best defense at LSU so far. And 2 youngsters have set themselves apart through the first 2 days of practice. Plus, as transfer quarterback Joe Burrow practices for the first time, who has the inside track to the starting job? And later, we catch up with former Brother Martin star DJ Augustine, who hosted a camp at his alma mater. The LSU football season began this weekend. The Tigers opened fall practice in Baton Rouge looking for a quarterback. And until they find one, LSU will have to count on its defense. LSU opens the season with 2 preseason All-Americans on defense, linebacker Devin White and cornerback Greedy Williams, and 2 guys up front who have a chance to step up to that elite level. Last year, edge rusher K'Lavon Chaisson had 27 tackles and 2 sacks as a true freshman. He has elite speed off the corner, and 1 practice in, he was one of the first guys Ed Ogeron talked about.
On defense, we had some guys show out today. I thought K'Lavon Chaisson had an excellent practice. K'Lavon Chaisson took off his preparation, his practice today. He was hard to block coming off the edge.
Nose tackle Tyler Shelvin was also an incoming freshman last year, but he had to sit out with eligibility problems. He was the #1 prep player in Louisiana 2 years ago, and he's a difference maker inside, and he's down from 378 pounds.
He's 350. He's better. He's in shape. He's healthy. He's going to really contribute to us this year. I think he's a very talented guy. We've got some work to do. He's got to get better.
Shelvin and Chasson represent help for junior Rashard Lawrence. Defensive coordinator Dave Aranda said last week it's the most talented front seven he's had to work with, and LSU may be relying on them a lot as a new quarterback gets up to speed. And that quarterback battle is now on. 4 guys who Ed Orgeron says all have a chance to be LSU's starting quarterback. And remember, LSU's top 4 rushers from last season, all gone. 4 of their 5 leading receivers are gone. And starting right guard Ed Ingram is indefinitely suspended from the team for an undisclosed reason. So whoever wins the job will have a large weight on his shoulders.
Blue 10! Blue 10, son!
As LSU got started, all eyes were on number 9, and Ohio State quarterback Joe Burrow showed he can fling it. One day in, Burrow worked 4th, but Ed Orgeron said they'll rotate that order and everyone will get equal reps. When asked about the quarterbacks, Orgeron mentioned Burrow first.
He's really confident. He's the leader out there. When he steps in there, he's cool, he's calm, he's smart. You know, we give the guys time off. He's in there watching film on his own. We're really a student of the game. He's mature. He's ready to go. He's competing. Just what we wanted.
Burrow has a long way to go to catch the other 3. Miles Brennan opens fall as the favorite to be LSU's opening day starter. Many thought he would take the job at some point last season as a true freshman, but he didn't. He threw 24 passes for 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Lowell Narcisse from St. James is much more of a running threat. He is actually still a freshman, now a redshirt freshman. And junior Justin McMillan, who might have been the best of the bunch in the spring game, is probably the long shot of the 4.
Justin looked really good, made some plays with his feet. I thought Lowell threw the ball better today. I thought Miles Brennan probably had his best day since we've been having this competition.
And at least for the opener, the job is probably Brennan's to lose. 4 guys, 1 job. But the Tigers insist that is not going to cause problems.
They understand that only one quarterback can play, and there's 4 of them, and they get that. But they're not trying to sabotage each other's chances. Those quarterbacks are helping each other out. I don't think it's really awkward. They all fit in really well with each other. They're really high character guys.
And they'll have to get ready quickly. The opener is now 4 weeks away. The coaches poll was released this week. LSU begins the season ranked 24th. The Tigers' opponents, the Miami Hurricanes, start number 8. LSU will play 5 teams this season that are ranked higher than they are. Still ahead, 13 years ago, DJ Augustine was on his way to leading Brother Martin to a 3rd straight state championship. Katrina prevented that from happening, but didn't keep Augustine from earning a decade-long career in the NBA. That's still going strong. We catch up with Augustine at his camp in Gentilly when we come back. Kids on the lakefront got to work with one of the best players in the world. Pelican star Anthony Davis was back in town this week at UNO for his annual basketball camp. He opted not to be interviewed. It's the 2nd year he's held this camp. DJ Augustine, meanwhile, held his free camp at Brother Martin this week for the 10th time. Soon, Augustine will begin his 3rd season in Orlando, his 11th in the NBA. It's a rare opportunity for these kids. They get personal instruction from a 10-year NBA veteran.
To do it here at my old high school with these kids, it's an amazing feeling, man. It's a blessing.
In the months before Katrina, DJ Augustine quarterbacked one of the greatest high school basketball teams in New Orleans history. His Crusaders won back-to-back state championships his sophomore and junior seasons at Brother Martin before Katrina robbed him of a chance for a three-peat. He finished high school in Houston, played 2 years at Texas, and was then the 9th overall pick in the NBA draft. He's bounced around the league, then 2 years ago, Orlando signed him to a 4-year, $29 million deal.
Orlando is great, man. I love living there. I love being there. I hope I'm there for the rest of my career. And as far as, I played for 8 teams in my 10 years, and You know, some people call it a journeyman, you know, stuff like that, but I just look at it as it's a blessing. I've been able to go places and live places I never thought I would live and meet people I never thought I'd be able to meet, and it's just been a blessing, man.
8 different teams now, but never New Orleans.
It almost happened a few years back, but you know, it's a business. You know, NBA is a business. You never know what can happen. You never know where you're going to end up. And, you know, it's a gift and a curse to be home. You know, it's great to be around family and friends. Sometimes it could be a distraction, too. But at the same time, I would love to be back in New Orleans someday, one day. You never know. But right now, I love it.
And in his 2 years in Orlando, he got to know new Pelican point guard Elfrid Payton very well.
EP is like a little brother to me, man. You know, we spent a lot of time together while we played together. He's a great individual. That's the one thing I can say about EP. He's a great individual, great person, and he works extremely hard on the court. So, I mean, the Pelicans getting a great guy, great character, great player, and he's going to do a lot of great things for the city.
Augustine, meanwhile, is now firmly established as the Magic's starting point guard, entering season number 11, but still just 30 years old, and he says far from done. We're back with more 4th Down on 4 in a minute. Our question tonight, how long will Drew Brees play in black and gold? It's a simple question. Very few people believe this will be his last season, but more than half think he's got 2 more years, and that is New Orleans Super Bowl window. For our producer, Denny Rockwell, photographer Adam Ney, Ricardo LeCompte, Andrew Doak, and our cast of dozens here at Eyewitness Sports, I'm Doug Mouton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on 4th Down on 4.